city.
Hey there, welcome back to the DMZ America Podcast for Wednesday, December 20th, 2023. I'm Ted Rall coming to you from the left.
I'm editorial cartoonist Scott Stantis coming to you from the right, and he's
Rob Rogers. By the way, my son, Rob knows this story.
I'm even farther left.
Like whenever Rob's name came up when my kid was little, he thought that your name was Roger because of the Star Wars, like Roger, those guys, that one character.
Oh yeah,
Roger. And he was so confused. I was like, no, it's Rob Rogers, and he's a dude. He's a real dude. He's a friend of mine.
Is there someone in the Rogers line that's name is Roger? Because that would be hilarious.
Roger.
That's
not in my family. I mean,
no one was despised enough to be named.
Somewhere in the world there is somebody, I'm sure, but no.
Yeah, but the worst thing, I was introduced once at a speech, and the guy didn't know my name. He didn't know who I was. It was a great occasion, and he goes, "Stan Stantis." I'm going, my parents were nuts. They weren't that fucking nuts. I mean, Ted Rall. I mean, there was
or Stan Tiss.
Mr. Tiss. I mean, Rall, I guess you could have a rhyme. I guess you could have Ball Rall or.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's not really any American name that like obviously rhymes with that. But yeah, anyway, believe it or not, it's been a rough name to have. I always have to spell it. It's like, and I'm like, it's like, oh, how do you spell? I'm like, the only way that name's ever spelled. It's like, Ted, how many D's does it have? The same number that everybody who's named Ted has. No one's named Ted. No one in the world. It's not. That's Todd. That's not. Yeah, it's like you're overthinking something that Americans don't normally do. Anyway, so all right. So let's talk about Joe Biden. So Joe Biden's poll numbers are now at the lowest of his presidency. The Monmouth poll has him at 34%. That's the lowest ever. I believe CNN has him at 37%. That's his lowest historical. He came in at like 45, 44, and it's been sort of like a steady decline pretty much ever since. There's been some moments where he got up to like 41, 42 again, and then went back down. It just seems like he's really in trouble in a way. And I know Democrats are their public messaging is, well, this guy's gonna, the election's a year away, which of course normally would be true. It would make all the difference in the world. It would kind of not even be relevant, except that for two things. Nobody's ever had numbers this bad at this point and ever been reelected. And also, these are, normally this is a campaign, it's a referendum on the incumbent. And the thing is, though, this time, like you used to be able to say, well, don't, stick with old reliable, don't vote for the challenger. You don't know what they might do. But the American people know exactly what Donald Trump might do because they're familiar with him. I mean, we haven't had a situation like this since 1892 when Grover Cleveland was running for re-election and facing a challenge from Benjamin Harrison, right? Who wanted to come back to power. It's just, or 1888, right? So it's just a very, it's an unusual situation. I don't see how Biden recovers, to be honest. I mean, it's like he's been trying to talk up the economy. And I think frankly, I agree that it's kind of unfair that people hate the economy because unemployment is low. And that's the number one most important metric when you're judging the economy. It just is. Who cares if you reduce inflation? If you're unemployed, you're fucked. Your inflation rate is 100% if you're unemployed. But it doesn't matter. You can't argue people into feeling better about the economy. He can't win on Gaza. I mean, the people who are pro-Israel think that he's not pro-Israel enough. The people who are pro-Palestine think that he's like a partner to genocide. I don't see how he reverses this. And of course, the number one concern is his age. And, like me and like the two of you, he's not getting any younger. So what the fuck could he do?
Rob?
Well, I will say that it's probably been a couple of weeks, so I haven't looked at the polls recently, and you just shared them. But I remember one of the people that was one of the Democrats was talking and saying that Obama in I guess it was his 2012, so it was about
Yeah, it was like
2011.
December 2011. Yeah.
Yeah, he was in a similar spot, and so they were just saying, calm down, everybody. But I don't know if it may even be worse for Biden right now. I do think that people are fickle, and so this, for instance, if the Middle East really blows up, then who knows? But if it does what would normally happen in this kind of a cycle, where it eventually things settle down, there's some sort of a deal, and we're not talking about it as much next year, I do think people will forget about it. And the economy, in terms of that, I think people, it's all personal. Like if you're paying more for groceries, you're not going to feel it as much as somebody who doesn't really look at their bill when they get it. So I think it's going to depend on whether or not people are feeling it personally when they go to the grocery store or the gas station. I think they are feeling it at the gas station more, but it's just not translating to an overall good feeling because prices are still high. I kind of think that I kind of believe the Democrats, message, which is just that it's too early and not to panic, but definitely to do things to try to counteract it if possible.
I think this speaks volumes about the perception of the president and how people, it really reminds me, I've mentioned this before, of George H.W. Bush, when he was saying, when he was running for re-election in 1992, and said that, things are fine, things are getting better. And he wasn't wrong. They were. However, people were still going to the grocery store and suffering. Today, inflation is definitely coming down. I mean, I'm going to sound like a Democrat commercial. He has done.
Don't forget also George H.W. Bush was coming off extraordinary popularity
90%
from the Gulf
percent.
War. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
The Gulf War was an incredible triumph. I mean, who can even remember back when America could win a war and easily, right? And with only I think 150 dead. And I remember looking it up, and a third of them died in car accidents. I mean,
is that true?
Yeah, like a bunch of them drove. Apparently, there was a real problem of our soldiers driving forklifts off docks. It happened several times.
Whoops. Jeez. So you're right. He came off of a 90% plus approval rating, comes into the election. There's a shallow recession. We're coming out of it. The same is holding true here. I think that if under almost any other circumstances, Joe Biden is at 60% right now. He should be. He's not.
Should be,
and we
especially
have to,
running against Donald Trump.
We have to be brutally honest here and say why that is. And the Democrats can say as often as they want what I just said. The economy's good. Mm-hmm. He's some have actually gone on to say he's vigorous and a transformative president. I would debate that one. But what I won't debate is that he's old and he acts old. He looks old. When you see him on TV, he just looks incapacitated. And so the question rises for if I'm a Democratic operative saying, are you going to believe me or your lying eyes? That's what's happening. And I mean, it happened 4 years ago. He could not have rallies. First of all, we had COVID, but his presence on the campaign trail was extremely limited. And I suspect that's going to be even more so this term. And Trump, for all of his, faults, and God knows they go up to the sun, but he is vigorous and he will have 2-3 rallies a day, and you're going to see him all over the place versus this president who clearly doesn't have the energy to do that. Not least of which is to say, are his cognitive skills, and people are questioning those. Donald Trump's cognitive skills, they weren't that great to begin with at birth.
True.
He's worse now. I mean, when you talk about polluting the blood of America, holy shit cakes. I mean, but no, his people poisoning the blood of it.
Poisoning the blood, yeah.
It's disgusting. And it's exactly what Hitler said. I mean, exactly. And his MAGA nation's going, yeah, they are. But
you notice he's more worried about being accused of plagiarism. He's saying, I never read Mein Kampf. I never read it.
He's worried about being accused of reading.
Yeah, that's a huge crime in MAGA nation. So, I mean, Rob, I've just laid out a bunch of stuff that you may or may not agree with. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
So I feel differently in some ways because I'm tired of people saying, "Oh, he's too old. He looks too old." But yes, compared to Clinton, for instance, I mean, since we're talking about H.W. Bush, the difference there is that H.W. Bush had Clinton to go up against, who had a lot of charisma, and then he had
and was young.
Ross Perot too, right? Wasn't that the
Yeah.
Ross Perot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But,
that was
Clinton
big
was
factor
young.
Don't
in the
forget
90s.
also, you mentioned Bill Clinton, Rob. Let's not forget 1996. I mean, people like Bob Dole was perceived as being old as shit compared to Bill Clinton. Of course, he went on to live like another 40 years and do Viagra commercials, but we didn't know that at the time, right?
Right.
So,
no, that's a good point. I mean, people were making old jokes about him at that time. But I think personally, I mean, like on a sort of a wish list kind of feeling, I wish he had stuck with his idea that, I'm going to be a transformative 4-year president and then I'm going to get out, and turn it over to someone else. Because we wouldn't be having this discussion right now.
I think people believed that too. I think people feel, people feel a little cheated and lied to. I was surprised, honestly, when he started making noise about running for re-election. I was like, but that's not what you said.
Yeah, and I think it's probably because Trump didn't go away. I mean, I think that's probably his thinking, is that I beat Trump, so I got to come back. But I
think any number of other Democrats could have done the same or better had the field been cleared and they'd been given
and had it been early enough that they could have made some inroads. Yeah, I think that's true. But at this point, I think we need to just stop all the belly aching and just say, look, we're down to a choice between, somebody who's done a lot of great things for the economy and for people in general, and who believes in democracy and the Constitution, and believes in, using government to help the less fortunate, and somebody who's an insurrectionist.
But Rob, I mean, that's not where the voters are. They're really pissed. I mean, when you look at the 5-way race, right, with Jill Stein and Cornel West and RFK Jr., the non-D and non-R vote totals to 33%.
There you go.
That's fucking astonishing.
That's better than Ross Perot.
To put that in, much better. And to put that into perspective, if that vote were unified between one candidate, that candidate could literally win a plurality of the popular vote, right? Theoretically. I mean, that's how pissed off. The voters don't want Trump, they don't want Biden, but I think in the end, the real problem is the enthusiasm gap. I mean,
that's huge.
Biden just doesn't, the support is fairly wide, but it's shallow. And there's a lot of people. Oh, and the other big takeaway from the most recent poll, and this was so gobsmacking, that in the New York Times Siena College poll, Nate Cohn, of course, always, let's remember, this is the same Nate Cohn who said on election morning of 2016 that Hillary Clinton had a 90% chance of winning. But Nate Cohn, nevertheless, said that he had to doubled and kept rechecking his numbers because he was convinced that they were mistaken, but he said they're not, that Donald Trump is winning among voters 18 to 29.
Yeah.
And that's and a lot of them really they view the support for Biden's support for Israel as completely a deal breaker. And these are people who voted for him last time. I mean, they're going to just sit home. I know I can't tell you how many people I hear from who would say, like, I have voted Democratic for 30 years, my entire life, every candidate, up and down the ballot. I will not vote for Joe Biden because he is signed off on genocide.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to respond.
I wonder what I would say. Let's say you were hired for $1 million to go and advise the Biden campaign, and you were going to be given a percentages of every point he increases in the polls, you make money. What would you tell him to do? I mean,
well, I would tell him. Yeah, I mean, I think that the whole Israel thing is a catch-22, because it's like, we have this history of supporting Israel that it basically befuddles me, but I understand somewhat, why it started back in the day, but now it seems like it should be changing with all the shit that's going on. So one thing I would tell him to do is, really, I mean, he has gotten some advice to be more forceful with the language about not killing innocent, civilians.
Mhm.
But it's probably too little too late, because the first thing he said was, we support everything Israel. So I guess I would advise him on that. But I think the other thing I would say is probably they have to start really defining this race in the terms that I was talking about earlier, a choice, and making and actually showing clips of both candidates, and trying to show the clips that make Biden look, more, not virile, but at least,
Honestly, he rides a bike. I mean, people are like, well, he fell off the
Yeah.
bike. He was on the bike in the first place to fall off.
Yeah, no,
know?
I mean, I think that's a point that needs to be made. I mean, yeah, sometimes when he tries to run, like when he's on camera and he does this, and I'm like, no, stop.
Yeah, he's like the grandpa character in Jackass.
Right. Right. Yeah. But you just want to say, that doesn't look better than just walking, confidently. No, I don't know. I'm certainly not a political, advisor, but I think, I guess the thing is to just start talking more about the things that have happened and the things they're going to do that make it, because people want to vote for something that's going to happen in the future. So you got to tell them to start talking about what plans he has that are different than what Trump's going to do.
People aren't going to believe that, though, right? Because they're going to say, like you said, you were going to do, you were going to forgive student loans, and young people are really angry at him.
Yeah.
Again, that's really one of the few things where Biden really did work on it and just couldn't get anywhere. I mean, he did keep coming back to it, and he just failed. He fought.
He's come back again.
That's not all his fault, right? I mean,
that's not his fault, really.
He
no,
tried to do it. Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. I mean, the people are really in an unforgiving mood.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, the country's in a very strange mood. If I was advising his campaign, Rob's point is well taken. Show a lot of vigor. I think that you have to have rapid response. I think they're depending too much on second parties like the Lincoln Project to be the ones who say, here's the dumb shittery today from Trump. I think it should be coming from the Biden campaign.
Can they give him a little stimulant and
I gotta wonder if that's not what they do when he, like the trip to China, to the G8. Was that in China when he went to go meet with the president there? I'm kind of convinced that they do give him a little extra caffeine or something, because he does, but he can't seem to keep that level of energy up. But yeah, I think, and Rob is exactly right. What are you going to do? What's a second term look like?
But then it's kind of like, it's always these if things, right? Like, well, okay, but I had the Republicans cock blocking me, so you have to also vote in a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate so that I can work with them. But then there's cynics like me who are like, Obama had all that in 2009 and he didn't use it.
Right. We could have had, could
have codified Roe v. Wade,
Medicare for all. I mean, it would have been, he had the 2-year window and he blew it. There's no question about that.
Well, he was trying to compromise too much, and that came back to
that. History is a real problem, I think, for that's why I just don't see a way out. I mean, unless there were some kind of breakthrough on, like, I could see a breakthrough on the Gaza conflict. Like, for example, where Biden could give a speech and say, the line stops here, that there has to be an immediate permanent ceasefire, like effective 12 midnight tonight local time. Otherwise, we're cutting off all aid to Israel. And people go, whoa.
We have a year. I think you're going to see Gaza is going to end, because you can only flatten it so much. Come on.
Yeah.
But Ukraine, there's from every place I'm hearing this, that there is some very serious pressure being put on Zelensky to get his people and get Ukraine to the negotiation table, negotiate a peace, an end to this war. And it really does at this
Or to
point.
oust him. There's also pressure to replace him with
Yeah, let's not, we oust people all the time. That never ends up well for the United States, quite frankly.
True.
But I think let's get the peace first. And I suspect, now think about this, it's almost Nixon in 72. If Biden comes forward and says, we have peace in Gaza, we now have peace in Ukraine, the economy's doing great.
He would need to do a Nixon thing. He would have to fly to Moscow and meet with Putin. He would look good. He would look good if he did that.
I don't know. No, he wouldn't look good.
Really? I mean, Nixon met with Mao Zedong
and Brezhnev.
And they were both the enemy, communists, evil dictators.
Yeah, but there wasn't as far as yeah, I guess so. I just think we're in different times right now. I don't think meeting with Putin with all the, the Russian interference in the election and all of the, all the other shit that's happened with Ukraine and
wait, you believe in the Russian interference in the election?
Yeah, sure.
Really? Okay. That's been so thoroughly debunked, though.
No, it hasn't. No, it
totally.
hasn't.
Radically, completely. Never happened. The FBI determined that it never happened. Like, like the hacking of the voting machines, all that stuff.
No, not that. No. I'm talking about the, all of the social media interference, that stuff.
$200,000 worth of Facebook ads. That's literally what we're talking about. In a $7 billion election.
Well, I don't know if it's only $200,000 worth, but
like not even really. It's like if
did you read the Columbia Journalism Review stories on the New York Times coverage of that? It's pretty damning, and this clearly is not a guy who has an axe to grind from
he's not getting
right.
Unlike me, he's not getting paid by the Russians
or me.
Well, all I'm saying is I think there's enough bad blood towards Putin that I don't think that Biden meeting with him would help him at all.
So that's still tough, Scott, right? Like in terms of if he wants to bring peace to the Ukraine, let's face it, there's no world in which that doesn't come with Ukraine recognizing a loss of territory, right?
Right.
They're never seeing Crimea ever again. The Donbass, probably they're never seeing again. So that means that objectively Ukraine has lost. And so it's kind of like declaring peace when you're losing never looks good for a politician.
I don't think that it says that they've lost, because you have the outbreak of the war, which was Putin's ginormous miscalculation that he thought he could march in and just take Ukraine in total, and he couldn't, and he didn't.
So you could say, well, we saved Ukraine in general.
Yes.
We just couldn't save all of it.
All of it.
Well, the chunks that have a large number of ethnic Russians, I always call it the dumbass, which is not what it's called.
Well, the part that Americans don't know, and it's unfortunate for Biden, is that, of course, what Russia currently has is pretty much what they had before the war, right? I mean, they had Donetsk and Luhansk.
Luhansk, I think could be, but I think both of them had relative autonomy. I think that's probably where
they had completely broken away. Yeah.
So, well, yeah,
they had their own flag and everything, Mr. Vexologist.
Yeah, and in fact, Ukraine, Russia kind of had recognized that Ukraine was lobbing missiles into it. Mm-hmm. So they recognized that there was an independence. If you could say that they are an autonomous, I think that's a compromise that perhaps Ukraine could live with.
Like the Kurdish zone in Iraq.
Exactly. Have a DMZ zone between Ukraine and Russia.
Freeze the conflict. Freeze it.
But here's the problem too, and this is an additional, and it's a big problem. The mechanizations that move forward to let Ukraine become part of NATO are moving forward. They just announced last week that they've moved yet another step closer to membership in NATO. I thought
that was the EU.
I thought it was NATO. Okay, well,
that was EU. Yeah.
If it's EU, then that's a different.
Ukraine cannot join NATO until they have non-disputed borders. It's part of NATO's rules. They have no country can apply.
But when you've got Putin on your border, it's always a little disputed. I'm just saying. But going back to, if both of those can be guided by the United States, particularly the Biden State Department, then he marches into, his favorables go through the roof. Economy's doing well. We're at peace. The two big hotspots in the world are now cool. What's Trump
I
going to
think,
run against that?
honestly, he could really, there's one issue that's been lying around, and he could say, Obamacare, let's finish the job. Like, the healthcare system is very unpopular right now.
It should be. It sucks.
It sucks. The only part of the healthcare system that people are not hating as much is urgent care. They like private urgent care clinics. I do too. It's like very convenient and affordable. But like, so if Biden were to say, listen, I recognize, I see that you have this issue. We're gonna now move on to the public option, just like my former president Obama wanted. We're gonna now finish the job. I think that'd be pretty fucking hard, even for Republicans to like stand up against.
Okay, one issue that is devastating to this administration, and because they've handled it very poorly, and it's getting worse, and that's the situation on the border.
True.
He has to do something about that, because
What should he do?
I think
That's
you got to
another
shut it down.
no-win situation for him, though. That's the problem. Is because
it is, but
he's going to piss off somebody.
You got to shut it down.
Blame.
First off, a sovereign country can't be a sovereign country without sovereign borders. And
Well, wait, if you're going to piss off somebody, Rob, I'm kind of thinking, well, who's pro-migrant? I mean, they don't vote, right? So politically, let's just say
I'm saying the Democrats
he just closes the border and says, "Fuck you," no one else comes in.
I mean, the Democrats would vote for him anyway, I think, no matter what, because Biden's not going to be as horrible as Trump was. So on the border, especially. But I do think that it says the same people that aren't going to vote for him because of the Gaza thing are the same people that wouldn't vote for him if he starts locking up people at the border and separating children and doing all of that.
Why not just close the border? You don't have to do any of that.
Yeah, but you have to have a policy. You can't just close the border. And then what about all the people that are, stuck on either side? I mean, you gotta.
Welcome to Mexico.
Well, right. I mean, they don't want them either. So,
Well, I'd be like, sorry, my Mexican friends. I hope you solve this problem.
Yeah.
Right. I would say you have to take some serious action down there, because this is. I mean, I was up in Chicago this weekend, and my liberal friends in Chicago are saying this is being handled so badly, and we are being overwhelmed, and the strain on the infrastructure, on the taxes, on the budget are overwhelming.
Here in New York, it's out of control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, in Chicago,
I think that cities, especially like Chicago and New York, that are handling the brunt of it, and I think that's where it's going to be bad for Biden if he doesn't do something. So yeah, you're right.
He's got baloney heads as mayors of both cities.
Although frankly, there's no world in which Donald Trump breaks 10% of the vote in Manhattan. I mean, it doesn't matter.
No,
that's true.
Yeah,
but he's a native.
True.
A native son.
He is
a native insurrectionist.
That's the thing. The thing is, we've always known who he was here. We've always known. Yeah.
You wrote the book on it, Ted, right?
All right. So let's wrap that up, and then we're going to take a break and come back for our last segment.
Okay. Bye. Come back.